Welcome, U.S. History. Today is Thursday, September 17th. And again, I guess if you're listening to this, you probably know this, but you want to listen or watch the video that we post every single day because not doing so is like skipping class. So you want to make sure you get these lessons, and then in our live sessions, we'll go ahead and answer any of the questions you might have because I know sometimes when I'm recording these, I don't think of all the questions that you guys would ask. But today is Constitution Day. That is a federal holiday. A federal law in 2004 made it so that it was the law we had to observe this day in all schools receiving public funds. It's usually observed September 17th unless that falls on a weekend, and then usually they say, the Monday or Friday before. The laws to observe the signing of the Constitution, September 17th, 1787. Now listen, nobody loves the Constitution more than me. As a matter of fact, you may have heard the rumor, and it is completely true, that I have the entire context or the entire body of the Constitution tattooed on my back. Obviously, I love the Constitution. But I do think it's weird that I'm forced to teach it on this particular day because, and only because, guess what Unit 2 is mostly about? Unit 2 is a review of all fundamental documents, and 90% of that unit is about the Constitution itself. So, absolutely, it's probably the most important thing I can teach you. A little weird that I have to stop what we're doing and teach you today, but that's okay. That is the way it is. So, what we're going to do today is just look at what you may or may not know about the Constitution already. And so, eventually, you are going to end up having to know all the amendments and some of the basic ideas, although the actual articles you're going to know a little bit more from your government class. But let's go ahead and jump to some things in U.S. history that you will end up knowing if my link is going to work. There we go. Okay, so in our class, we're going to end up focusing on the amendments, but let's just see if you know a few things from government. Obviously, I can't ask you in here because you're not going to be able to respond. So we'll just pause for a second. But how many articles are in the Constitution? Well, of course, there are 7 articles or chapters in the Constitution. Again, going back to that tattoo I have on my back, some are longer than others. Article 1 probably takes up half of my back. The others are much briefer. How many branches of government are established by the Constitution? Take a moment and think about that. And hopefully you're going, okay, legislative, judicial, executive. If you're trying to think of more, I don't know why, because there's only 3. How many amendments are there in the Bill of Rights? Now, the Bill of Rights actually has, or it confuses some people, the Bill of Rights and the amendments to some degree are the same thing, at least the first 10. See, because there are 27 amendments to the Constitution, but the first 10 all came at once, which is why we call them the Bill of Rights. So I guess I just gave away the next question. There are 27. Now, that 27th Amendment, I think, was 1991. So, I was in college. Yes, I'm that old. It is a living document. It is very conceivable that sometime in the next 20 or 30 years, maybe in the next 5 years, there could be a 28th Amendment. It is a living document. Okay, which amendment, what I presume is pretty important to you guys because it gives 18 to 20-year-olds the right to vote. That is one of the more recent ones. That is the 26th Amendment. Wow, it is hard to draw a circle with a pen on a mouse pad. And, of course, part of the Constitution, part of fleshing out and interpreting the Constitution is you're looking at Supreme Court cases. And we're going to look at a few of the important ones throughout, the couple hundred years of U.S. history we are going to be covering, actually 150 years. Which Supreme Court case said school segregation was illegal? So, hopefully you already know. Of course, this is Brown versus Board. Brown versus Board is a court case from 1954 that said school segregation was illegal. And that's one of the examples of one of the cases. But here's one I want you to think about, and most people get wrong. So this is sort of putting the Constitution into action, and this is my favorite thing to do in Unit 2, is to talk about real-life scenarios and play them out with you. So I want you to imagine you move to Pittsburgh, and you're a car salesperson, okay? And you are required to dress professionally, including a tie. And because you're from this area, and you're a glutton for punishment, you're a Cleveland Browns fan, and you wear a Cleveland Browns tie. Your boss tells you, hey, listen, a lot of Pittsburgh businesses advertise with us, and some of them maybe a local radio station, etc., play the Pittsburgh Steelers, I don't want you wearing that tie to work. If your boss says you cannot wear your Browns tie to work, now to be clear, there's no profanity on this tie. It's just a typical, Cleveland Browns tie. If your boss tells you you cannot wear it to work and you need to take it off immediately, has your First Amendment right, which is partially defined by your freedom of speech, has it been violated? And as you think about that, I'm going to tell you that you're probably wrong, because the answer is absolutely not. Now, you may go, what? Hold on, why can't I wear a Cleveland Browns tie? If your boss asks you to do something in order to do your job along these lines, your rights have not been violated because you're not threatened with jail. The government isn't telling you this. The government isn't restricting your ability to wear this tie. Actually, you could wear the tie. You just might get fired. You just might get sent home from work. You don't have a constitutional right to not have consequences for what you do. So, for example, there have been cases where musicians have sided for or against a particular president. And so that musician then gets boycotted by the people who like that president or don't like, depending on which way that scenario goes. And then they go, our freedom of speech is being infringed upon. No, it's not. Your freedom of speech says you can say, I don't like this president or I do like that president. And the consumers have freedom of speech to say, oh, then we're not going to buy your record. We're not going to buy your music anymore. So in a more reasonable context, if I wore a tie to school that said, and I would never do this, that said, I don't like Sandusky High, Mr. Talbot could make me take that tie off. He could be like, what are you doing? You work at Sandusky High. Why are you wearing a tie that says I don't like Sandusky High? I say, well, that's my freedom of speech. He goes, yeah, if you want to be unemployed, it's your freedom of speech. I don't have a right to wear it. Now, I can never be thrown in jail for this. Okay, I can never be thrown in jail for wearing this tie, but I don't have a right to keep my job if my boss says not to wear that. Now, that, again, is going to surprise some of you. But again, your freedoms absolutely are protected from government infringement, but it doesn't always make it so that you're not free from consequence. You may have the freedom to say hateful things, put up a hateful sign in your neighborhood, and everybody in your neighborhood may not want to talk to you anymore. That is a consequence of your freedom of speech. So we'll talk about specific examples like this when we get to the Constitution. And I love talking about the Constitution, and that's why Constitution Day is a great idea in theory. I just wish they didn't make it so it had to absolutely be today. But I promise future good conversations, engaging conversations about the Constitution, because it is absolutely the most relevant thing that I could teach you. But let's jump into our beginning unit first, go back to these notes, and I want to do a quick review. So we've already talked about biased, unbiased, primary, and secondary. Okay, so those are the four concepts I've taught you so far. And if you don't remember that, hey, watch yesterday's video again. That's the beauty of having these things recorded. But I'm going to review that concept of bias and unbiased. I know we did pictures the other day. I'm going to go back to 2012, but it really wouldn't matter when you were doing it, and talk about the election that year, which was Mitt Romney versus Barack Obama. It doesn't matter, though. It could be this year. It could be any election year. The whole idea is the source biased or unbiased? So let's look at the Sandusky Register. If they write an editorial, would that be biased or unbiased? Well, I'll give you a hint. You can never use an editorial as a source when we do newspaper document of the weeks. And the reason is an editorial is biased. That's the whole idea. It is opinionated. An editorial is where the editor of the paper or one of the people they've assigned to write it have said, I know this isn't based in fact. Here's my opinion. So it's biased. You may agree with it. You may disagree with it, but it is biased. Now, if somebody says, okay, these two people are running for president. Here's a report by the Office of Budget and Finance on how much each candidate's easy for me to say, proposed programs will cost. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's just unbiased. They're saying, hey, this person has this plan, and we estimate it to cost $4 billion. And this other person has this plan, and we estimate it to cost $3 billion. That's it. Obama headquarter press release. So the president issues a press release. Now, it could be Obama in 2012, or it could be Donald Trump in 2020. But when the president issues a press release, it's from their perspective. It's biased. It's their opinion. So what we've got to figure out is, like, who's just giving us facts? So we'll look at some of these other examples. Nonpartisan report by the Board of Elections regarding spending. So they're basically saying Trump spent this much, Biden spent this much, or in 2012, Mitt Romney spent this much, Obama spent this much. But those are just straight facts. Those are unbiased. We can look those numbers up and confirm them. However, when you look at something like a commercial paid for by either candidate, those are biased. That's what they are. The Trump campaign is making commercials that push their opinion. The Biden campaign is making commercials that push their opinion. You may agree with either one of them, that's fine, but those are biased. They often will make statements, both of them, which will say, oh, that other person is no good for the country. Whether you agree or disagree with it, it's something that's very hard to prove. An example I'll give in the live sessions is that if you say, Mr. Penrose is ugly, you may agree with that. But there is no book of ugly where you can verify it. There's no place where you can go, oh, yep, here's his name. He's ugly. That's not how this works. Anything that you can't prove or verify is going to be biased. Anything that you can look up and go, oh, that's actual factual proof. That's unbiased. So there's some other examples here, but I think you should hopefully start to get the right idea. Your challenge this week, though, is about the other concept we had, primary or secondary. And what page did I hide that on? How about this page? So you haven't seen those notes yet. Don't look there. These are the notes that you've taken already. Primary or secondary. Your document of the week challenge is primary or secondary. Reminder, primary sources are things that are original to that time period. I'm going to have some examples in our live session where I show you things that are from that time period. If they're original to that time period, or it's something that somebody wrote or took a picture of from that time period, it is going to be primary. Secondary is somehow removed from the event. They're a step back. They're just telling you about it. A lot of your textbooks, they may have a few primary sources within them, but the textbook itself is a bunch of historians telling you that stuff secondhand. They weren't there. They weren't at, they weren't in the Civil War. They weren't in World War I. They weren't in World War II. They're telling you the information about it. Your document of the week challenge is to say that Janelle Collette thing, that letter that I gave you on Monday, is that primary or secondary? Well, we're talking about, she's analyzing a letter from 1776, but she's a professor or teacher who's currently still teaching. So unless you think she's 230, 40, 50 years old, you should know the answer to that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a few new notes today. There are not a ton. Now, I know it looks a little goofy here on this page. I reversed the order of a few things because I wanted you to get some information before you did your document of the week. So yesterday you took number 1, and you took bias and unbiased, and then primary and secondary. Those are source basics. That was all under number 1. Your second topic is economic basics. So let's take a peek at some economic concepts. You might remember some of these. Okay. And we'll even do a quick review of them when we're done. So we've got 4 major economic systems. And it's just a good idea to know these 4 because they come up in the air and they might help us understand a little bit more about some of the history concepts. So the one that should be most familiar to you is market economy. Citizens make decisions based on what is made and how much goods are. The best way I can explain this is if you have an amazing idea, you think up the next greatest and most amazing thing, you get rich. If you think up a really stupid idea that no one wants to buy, you go broke. That's what we live in. We live in a market economy. That's basically what our government is all about, or our economic system is all about. So if I come out with some history product, I have some history ties that I'll wear, and I come out with my own line of history ties, and I think they're amazing. I've got 365 ties that come out, one for every day based on a historical event of that day. I got a pretty good idea that I'm going to go broke because even though I'm really excited about the idea and I think it would be great, let's be honest, there aren't a lot of people buying history ties. So therefore, I go broke. But you come up with some app that everybody becomes addicted to, or what's the silly game my kids are playing where they're all I don't know, it's some video game where they have these little characters and they're trying to run through some sort of maze or obstacle course, and you try to be like the last survivor. Okay, if you thought up that game and everybody's addicted to it and everybody's playing it all the time, well, then you're probably going to get rich. That's a market economy. Now, that's very different from what we call a command economy. This is where the government says what you're going to do. The government, it's just like it sounds. They're going to command you. And again, by the way, in case you forgot this, you're writing all of this down. You want these in your own notes so that you have them for reference and you can use them on worksheets and tests and whatnot. The command economy, the government makes decisions. So the government tells you you're going to make history ties. And if it does happen to be a hit, you're not going to get rich. If it does happen to be a failure, you're not going to go broke. You're just doing what the government tells you to. They're in charge. Now, there are some countries, and to some degree, you could even say this a little bit about ours. We're primarily a market economy. But whenever you have a little bit of both, you're a mixed economy. So if the government is making some decisions and the people are making some others, that's a mixed economy. I don't want to confuse you and say the United States, but I mean, I guess if you get technical, we have public schools. We're providing them, but there are private schools as well. We have public services like firemen. So, for example, that's just a service that's provided. But let's keep it simpler. Let's say the government says, you know what, America, you've been bad at making cars the last 30 years. We're taking over car manufacturing, but you can do everything else. That would become a mixed economy. So the government is all of a sudden in charge of this one industry, and the people are still in charge of all of these others. It's a mix of market and command. And then finally, our fourth type of economy, and our last note for today, where'd it go? Wow, made that tough, is a traditional economy. Now, a traditional economy is an economy where things are based on social customs. These tend to be nations that are a little bit, that are poorer. People make what they make because they've always made them. And so you might go someplace and they're making beautiful handmade weaved baskets. And if you ask the person, oh, hey, where did you learn how to do this? They very likely will tell you, oh, my mother or father made baskets and taught me, and my grandfather and grandmother, they made baskets and they taught me. And it's just, there's sort of these traditional roles that people fill, and they just, based on social customs, here's what we do. So those are the four economic systems. You need to have that along with the notes you took on, would it have been Wednesday? You don't have these yet. Don't worry about these. I'm going to give those to you tomorrow. You took source basics. This chunk right here you already took. And you now have taken right up to here. Okay, we're going to do these later on. That's what I expect you to have written down in your notes so you can reflect upon them. And we're going to peek real quick and see if we can apply some of these things. Oh no, has it disappeared? Well, it's going to be tough to give you. Here we go. Nope. Wow, I managed to be able to not find them. Are they here? Aha. Well, okay, so again, kind of wish you were here because I'd have you walk up to the board and do this, but the government controls all major industry. Well, you should know. What type of economic system is that? Look over your notes. That is, of course, command. Now, a businessman invests all of his money and makes a new gadget, tries to sell it on TV at night for $19.99. If you've ever heard those ridiculous commercials, that's market. And if he's got a great idea, you got the next Snuggie, I mean, you're rich. If you've got the next thing that I can't even think of because it was a dumb idea, well, then you're broke. Okay, the government decides that healthcare would best be run by the government from now on. Well, they just said healthcare, just that one thing. So it's mixed because the rest is market, and I guess in healthcare it would be command. So if you have the combination of the two, that is mixed. People make what they make because they've always made that. But ladies and gentlemen, that is traditional. Those are just a few examples of our economic systems in action. In our live sessions, we're going to review some of these concepts and remind you about your document of the week. So you're listening to this hopefully today on Thursday. Your document of the week is due by the start of your class. Make sure you have that turned in. Watch Monday's video, and that document of the week has to have your name, has to have the source, which is Janelle Collette analysis. It has to have a 3-sentence, 5 if you're in honors, summary, and then leave a space, and then a 3-sentence, 5 if you're in honors, opinion, and then you have to do that challenge. The document Janelle Collette analysis, you have to tell me, is it primary or secondary, and why? Okay, now that one doesn't have to be any number of sentences. You'll just say, oh, I think it's primary because, or I think it's secondary because. Get those in. These are easy points. And another warning, it looks like we're going to have a test over this very basic material probably next Friday. That would be next Friday, September 25th. Okay? Everybody have a great day. Be sure to watch tomorrow's videos. And tomorrow we have a Friday Fun Day. And that one, I'm trying to film them in unique places or doing unique things. And tomorrow's is from a boat in bad weather. All right, everybody. Have a great day.